Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, friends, and the foes out there. Welcome to another episode of the Blood Brothers podcast with your host, Dilly Hussain. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to remind all the avid podcast listeners that you can find this episode and all 4 seasons on all the major audio platforms. And if you're tuning in via YouTube, don't be cheeky. Do remember to click subscribe to the Five Pillars YouTube channel. Today's guest is a dear brother, a friend, an advisor, someone who requires no introduction, but he is the world-renowned, much admired, the eloquent CEO and founder of Sapience Institute, the debater, the educationalist, our brother Hamza Tzortzis. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Most of the brothers are men of piety, or of the within that sphere. They don't like it when an introduction is given, but it's necessary, bro.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but it's cringe at
You're
times,
almost too short.
Oh,
I'm only kidding.
thanks. What are you saying?
Good, bro. How are you?
I'm good.
Looking well-ish.
Yeah, I've put on a bit of weight.
It's all right.
It's got to a point with the...
It happens to me all the time.
Yeah, putting it on is much easier than losing it. But then again, you have theories about that, right? What was that Norwegian thing you were telling me about yesterday?
Imagine we just cut there now. That'd be really funny. It's called the Norwegian protocol.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with losing weight per se. It's to do with increasing your VO2 max. One of the fastest ways of increasing your VO2 max is to adopt...
What's VO2 max? Just in case...
To be honest, I'm not much of a sports scientist, but it's to do with how much oxygen you can take in, right, when you're exercising, in a simple way.
Sure.
And for those who know better, correct us on the comments. But it's important for longevity, like life longevity, and it's important for health, and especially for martial sports like boxing or mixed martial arts and so on and so forth. So the VO2 max, to increase it, you use a protocol called Norwegian protocol. And the Norwegian protocol is basically 4 minutes on, 2 minutes off times 4 or 5.
How long have you been doing that?
Now that 4 minutes on has to be around, I think, if I remember correctly, around 85% of your heart rate max, or 8% of your heart rate max.
For 4 minutes?
Yeah, it is tough, but then you have 2 minutes off. But that 2 minutes off is a working 2 minutes off. So it's active recovery. So say, for example, you're running for 4 minutes at around 80% of your heart rate max. Then you're walking for 2 minutes. Then you repeat that 3 or 4 more times.
How is a normal person going to sprint for 4 minutes?
It's not a sprint. Because
80% is?
No, sprint is about 90%, 95%.
Okay.
75, 80, 85% is like it's like a good run. You could do it. You're out of breath, but you're struggling. It's intense, but it's not going to destroy you. So if you do that, 3 times a week for about 4 weeks, you could increase your VO2 max to a very high level. I got it to a very high level to the point where almost, I think, maybe elite amateur boxing standards. So you shouldn't do long runs. Like people do long runs.
So how much were you running in preparation for your bouts?
Running?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't doing long runs at all.
You didn't do this.
Remember, because of my age, I'm 44, so I wouldn't even run per se. I had a hack. What I did is I used the elliptical machine.
Okay.
So it's less problematic on your joints, but I think it mirrors the energy pathways of boxing because you use your legs and your arms, right? And it's all about the heart rate, really. It's not necessarily about what exercise you're doing. I preferred the elliptical machine because doing that 3 times a week for about 3 or 4 weeks, I think VO2 max went really high, yeah? But it's intense. So it's 4 minutes, like 85%, I believe, on 2 minutes active recovery times 4 or 5. And after 3 or 4 weeks, you start seeing the results. It's the fastest way, from what I've seen, concerning the research, of increasing your VO2 max. But it's tough, bro.
Man, you'd be a really valuable PT in another metaphoric life.
Yeah, I prefer training people than well, that's not necessarily true. I probably prefer training people as much as I like training myself. So
that'll relate on a later conversation about managing and leading and all that. But on martial sports, before we move on to more pressing issues, did you watch the Eubank.Jr. and
I didn't watch the fight. I watched highlights.
Conor Benn fight? Okay.
I watched the highlights, yeah.
Did you see the entrance?
Yeah. I was actually really happy. I was really happy that Eubank.Jr. and his father, Chris Eubank Sr., they actually went out together. It's very important, especially for the youth, for the young people. They see reconciliation. That's a very important thing, especially from an Islamic perspective as well.
Do you think it's irrelevant whether it was staged or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Because with things like this, bro, they're symbolic.
Okay.
Not many people are going to look at the kind of background story. The point is,
It was a good background story.
it is a very good background story, of course.
He's not proud of his son.
But what's interesting about
sports.
the whole fight is look at the relationship between Chris Eubank Jr. and Senior, and also
Conor Benn
and his father.
Yeah.
It's nice to see, bro.
That is.
Because one of our crises, I believe, as a kind of British community especially, is the crisis of fatherhood. Because a lot of our youth, they look up to people that are not necessarily ideal from an Islamic perspective. And I think one key reason is not because of the youth themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's a social systemic issue and influence, but also because of parenting. Because we live in a dual economy, because maybe their fathers have had their own kind of upbringing and trauma. I'm not saying, it's a disaster, but what I'm saying, I think there's a collective lack of adequate role models. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's lots of good as well, but generally speaking, if a young teenager is looking up to some people that, are excessively materialistic or arrogant or not in line with Islam, that's actually a failure of someone's fatherhood if their son is doing that, in my view. It's a massive failure. Because you're supposed to be the role model, or someone more in line with our tradition that's more, spiritual and manly and principled. That should be their role models, not some man boy, So it's very important that happened, because it's a symbol. It's good to see athletes and people who are popular, they're reconciling with the parents, and also they have a good, adequate, or a seemingly adequate relationship with their father, because it's very important for a man, for a boy, to have a very good relationship with their father. And it's difficult because a lot of young boys or young men, they don't really listen, they observe. So you have to be that role model as best as possible. So I like the reconciliation aspect, it's Islamic. It's very important. A lot of people have trauma. We're going to have trauma all the time. And I don't mean trauma in a liberal sense or in a woke sense. In a real sense, we have big T traumas, small T traumas, whether it's parents, whether it's life experiences, whether it's self-inflicted stuff, whatever the case may be. We're going to have those traumas, and those traumas become lenses. And they become lenses because the way we reacted to the trauma has established that lens to navigate life. So, for example,
do you ever see trauma playing out in the dawah scene?
All the time. But trauma plays out in it's not just dawah scene, but it's a human reality.
You'd assume that those within that sphere would be better at containing it or controlling it.
Obviously, a lot of things that we see online are projections, or they're seeking admiration, public admiration, affirmation, and that is a sign of other issues. But we're not here to psychoanalyze, because when you point the finger, three fingers are pointing back. We should focus on ourselves. But generally speaking, the whole concept of trauma is an important one, and we have to frame it Islamically. So when there's a life event, and usually it could be something like you realize you're alone, you realize you don't belong, or you realize something's wrong, because children have an innocence. So they grow up and then they realize, hold on a second, something's wrong. Or hold on a second, I'm alone. Or hold on a second, I don't belong. Like for me, I wrote this in the preface to my book, The Divine Reality. Mm-hmm. I used to sit in the bath when I was around 11 years old on my own, and I realized, oh my God, I'm the only one conscious of my own conscious awareness. And I used to think I'm not consciously aware of someone else's conscious awareness, people that I love, friends, family, because I'm alone in the bath right now. For some reason, I know this is a form of solipsism, but for some reason, that was one of the most loneliest experiences I've ever experienced in my life. I used to cry. Now, I reacted to that in a particular way. Now, that reaction, that trauma, it's an event. I react in a particular way, and that created a lens, right? A lens on how to deal with life. And that becomes your superpower, but you also have a kryptonite at the same time. Mm-hmm. So for me, I could do it myself. I can lead. I could take a lot of pressure, stuff like that. And there's other events that help me kind of affirm that inverted commas superpower. Everyone has it. So the way you reacted helped you manage that trauma. But at the same time, it has a huge weakness, which I call, it's your kryptonite, if you like. Everyone has that in life. Every human being, bro, whether it's with family, parents, even if your parents were the best parents in the world, everyone's going to have some kind of trauma, a big T trauma or a small T trauma. Our job as du'at, as mentors, as Muslims, caring for each other and caring for humanity, that we need to teach people that you should stand in the possibility that the meaning you're giving that particular trauma is not the only meaning. Give it the meaning Allah wants you to give it, and give it the meaning the Prophet ﷺ wants you to give it. Once you do that, you're able to transcend your trauma in a particular way. And this is in line with cognitive science anyway. Now, this is a general principle, because other people listen to this and might think, oh, but I may have a chemical imbalance, or I've got a medical issue. Go to a medical practitioner, for sure. This is a general principle. But you see this in the Quran. You see the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks to the Prophet ﷺ, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he talks about, who he found you lost and guided you, right? Or you're an orphan and who took care of you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving or reminding the Prophet ﷺ to attach the correct meaning to his life trauma, right? He was an orphan and so on and so forth. And you see that throughout the whole of the Quran. It's like a cognitive spiritual reframing. Surah Al-Kawthar, for example. Like, who is the most merciful person to have walked this earth?
The Prophet.
It's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was a rahmah to the worlds. Yeah, he is an intense, loving mercy to the worlds. Did the Prophet ﷺ love the believers more than we love each other?
He loved us more, of course.
Yes, good. Can my love for my children, or your love for your children, may Allah bless them, can that love match the love the Prophet had for his children?
No, his was more, of course.
Exactly, because his heart was pure, right?
Of course.
Now imagine his son passing away. Ibrahim. His son passes away, and with great love comes great pain. So imagine the pain the Prophet ﷺ had when his son passed away. Holding his son dead, he's hearing your apatar, you're cut off. Imagine the anguish, bro, because with great pain, with great love comes great pain.
Sahih.
Surah Al-Kawthar. There's opinions that Surah Al-Kawthar was a response to the death of Ibrahim.
Yeah.
Now, does Allah give a condolence?
No.
If you study the language of Surah Al-Kawthar, it is extremely emphatic. Indeed, we have given you the abundance, right? If you go through the language, the languages that not only has Allah given something, but it's like He's giving it with His own hand and something that He owns. And Al-Kawthar is the river in paradise, but it's also Kathara, Kathir, Aktharu, whatever, many things, an abundance of things. And the wow in the Al-Kawthar means a perpetuity of abundance, continuing abundance.
It was revealed to specifically address what was being said to the Prophet ﷺ in the loss of his son.
Yes, but look at the cognitive spiritual reframing,
Of course.
which is, okay, you're mourning, you have the greatest love for your child, and with that comes great pain, but we have given you the abundance.
For sure.
And we see this. It's like, the abundance of believers on the Day of Judgment, right? In a way where we are His spiritual progeny, if you like, yeah? Fine, your son has passed away. They're calling you apatar, cut off, but you're going to have the greatest number of believers on the Day of Judgment. You're successful both from a, political state perspective and spiritual perspective. You are the leader of all the prophets and, and so on and so forth. You are the most awfully praised person on this planet.
Of course.
The adhan is always being announced and proclaimed every kind of microsecond because of what's happening in the world. Someone is always praising the Prophet ﷺ, right? We have in ilm al-hadith, in the studies of ilm al-rijal, the studies of the people, the biographies of the people of hadith, we have around stories or understanding of 10,000 of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Name me 10 men connected to Obama. Give me the second names. Give me the date of birth. Tell me who they were. We don't know these people, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
So the Prophet is the most studied, the most praised person. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is cognitive reframing the Prophet ﷺ, but also spiritually, because the abundance also includes the river in paradise, the highest level in paradise, eternal bliss, which is a place that if you suffered the most in the dunya and you're destined for Jannah, you're going to be split in paradise for a split moment, and you're going to be asked, did you ever suffer? You're going to say, Wallahi, I've never suffered. Eternal bliss, bro. Yeah. Forget 30 years, 40 years, 70 years, 80 years, eternal bliss. So, and then what does Allah say? فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْهَرْ. Therefore pray to your Lord, your Rabb, and sacrifice. Respond to this with gratitude, respond to this with ibadah, with connection, respond to this with salah, respond to this with sacrifice. And the one who hates you, he's the one who's really cut off. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this in a very quick way, when you look at the Quran is designed to cognitively and spiritually reframe you. And wallahi, I really believe this. If we all as believers learn to adopt the meaning from the Quran and Sunnah and give it to the trauma that we have in our lives, whether it's a death in a family, whether it's war, whether it's suffering, whether it's disease, whether it's all of these things, small t traumas, big T traumas, it would clean that lens and help us see reality for what it is. And we saw this with the people of Gaza, bro.
Yes, I was going to say to you, how do you, so there's 2 points. Let's get to Gaza. Secondly, to this point, which leads to, or can be related to doubts. Trauma. Do you see trauma ever linked to people's doubts?
Mostly, yeah. So we have Lighthouse Mentoring Service. So we've mentored I think thousands of people for the past 4 or 5 years. And a lot of the questions that come in are basically so-called intellectual questions, doubt about a hadith, a prophetic tradition, doubt about a verse or something towards those lines, or theological issue. Many of the times I would even say, and the Chief Operating Officer, Yusuf Ponders, he would agree with me as well, because he does most of the mentoring. May Allah bless him. I don't know how he does it, to be honest, but alhamdulillah, may Allah preserve him. Amen. It's the majority of the reason is traumatic. So for example, we had someone who came to see us and he was doing the algorithm for, I think it was Facebook. Smart guy. He had a small stature. He was kind of he wasn't an aggressive or big person. He was polite. He had a good mannerism. He had an amicable way of being. And we had an initial discussion about consciousness. Can AI be fully conscious? And because that was part of my postgrad, doing stuff like that, consciousness, philosophy, whatever. To cut long story short, we had a bit of a debate on this issue, and I said, no, AI can never have inner subjective conscious states because AI is based on syntax, symbols, not semantics, and there's no way of adding the meaning semantics onto the symbols. Essentially is reduced to zeros and ones, which are electronic on and off switches, blah 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 blah. I talked about the Professor John Searle Chinese room experiment.
Was he convinced?
Yeah, he got stuck. So, but I don't like when in the mentoring process getting people stuck like that way intellectually.
It can lead there sometimes
because it puts barriers. Yeah,
it can lead there sometimes.
It can, but the mentor shouldn't do that. The mentor should.
How do you avoid it?
The empathy and emotional intelligence and having the right objective. So adopting hikmah, because hikmah is not ilm. And da'wah, Allah says, don't give da'wah with ilm. Allah says, udu'u ila sabili rabbik. Call to the way of your Rabb with what? Hikmah. Yeah, hikmah is applied ilm. And hikmah is you have an Allah-pleasing goal. So the goal has to please Allah, not please your nafs, not please anything else. Please Allah. And you're applying ilm in a particular context to achieve that goal. So with this guy, what is the Allah-pleasing goal? We want him to be guided. We want him to be elevated. We want him to find awakenings. What's his context? Okay, his age, his background, even his gender, his experiences, really trying to empathize. Then you get the ilm from Islam, Quran and Sunnah, in the way of the scholars, and you apply that ilm in his context to achieve that goal. And that's the algorithm of hikmah. And people don't use it, unfortunately. Even the Salaf said this. We have too many people of ilm, not enough people of hikmah. Yeah. And just to echo that point, look at the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, when the young man came to him and said, let me commit zina, from an abstract ilmi perspective, ilm in abstracto, if you like, the person could have said, don't you know this is haram? You do it, you're going to get punished. Nothing wrong with that statement, right? But the Prophet was a man of hikmah. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. What's the Allah pleasing goal? I want this person elevated and guided. Okay, Allah pleasing goal. What's his context? He's a young man. Not only is he young, he feels comfortable enough to address me in this way. So the person applied the ilm in his context to achieve that goal. And what did he do? He basically said, what about your mother? What about your sister? What about your auntie? Then he put his hand on his heart, I believe, and said, and made dua for him. That's hikmah, bro.
Yeah.
That's hikmah.
SubhanAllah.
Hikmah is not like, shut your mouth, you're going to hell, right? Now, that may be hikmah, by the way, depending what the goal is, if it's Allah pleasing. So in certain contexts, holding someone and give them a good shake psychologically, if you like, could be the best thing. But you can't do that, then justify it. You have to first say, what's the context? Who's the person? Is it Allah pleasing goal? Is it the most pleasing thing to Allah? Then apply ilm in that context to achieve the goal. Anyway, so trauma
Trauma and doubts.
Yeah, so trauma becomes... So with that guy, when we talked about AI, he had a particular trauma because after I said to him, look, bro, what's your main issue about Allah? And he said to me that Allah has similar names and attributes to human beings. And I was like, this is Aqidah 101. Laysa kimithlihi shay. There is nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no example that you can fathom that can compare to an example of Allah, yeah? Tawheed, affirming Allah's oneness, his perfection, his names and attributes to the highest degree possible. They are transcendent. You can't compare them to human attributes because that would be a form of, humanization, which is shirk, right? And so on and so forth. But then I realized something because in the beginning, bro, he felt that AI, which is a creation of humans, could have the same attribute as their creator, the humans. Do you see the logic?
Yeah.
But when it comes to Allah, he had a problem that Allah's creation, human beings, could have something similar, even in linguistically, to Allah's names and attributes. So that's a logical contradiction, yeah? So why in one case it's fine and the other case it's not fine? Obviously we affirm Allah's oneness and transcendence, but do you see the contradiction in his logic? I subtly exposed that to him because usually, and I always say this, kufr, rejection of truth will always contradict itself. When I saw that contradiction, that was an indication of something else going on. So I changed the subject slightly because I knew something about his background. And I talked about my father, how I framed my father when I became Muslim in the wrong way, then how I reconciled that, and how it created a new realm of possibility to create such an amazing relationship now, and so on and so forth. I mentioned that about myself, then I brought it to him saying, maybe that's happening to you. Your relationships with your father or father figures has created this lens that makes you see reality in a skewed way, therefore makes you see Islam in a skewed way. Bro, and Allah forgive me if I'm adding spice to this, but from what I remember, wallahi, he stood up, he was shaking, he was crying. He said, this is emotional abuse. Sabur Ahmed was there as well. It was like almost like wahi came down, bro, like proving to us that this is what's happening. This is, almost, the sunnah of Allah. This is what happens. It's the heart, it's the qalb. Because it's not the eyes that go blind, it's the hearts that go blind, right? And sometimes our hearts get blinded because we have reacted to our trauma in a way that is not in line with the Quran and Sunnah. We've given it the wrong meaning. So he's probably given it the wrong meaning. It's created a skewed lens, if you like. Bro, if you have a mirror usually reflects reality. But if it's cracked, even a smiling face could look sinister.
For sure.
Yeah, and that's what happens to the way we react to certain traumas. Now, that's not to gun down people who have traumas, because I've had traumas. I could mention a few for you today if you want. You've had traumas, right? And you're probably undergoing traumas still. Well, bless you. We all go through traumas at different stages of our lives. We have to now adopt the meaning that Allah wants us to give it, because it allows you to transcend that trauma. And this is in line with cognitive science as well. They say stand in the possibility that the meaning you give in that particular trauma is not the only meaning. So we say give it the meaning the Quran and Sunnah want you to give it, and you can transcend your trauma. Anyway, so I suggested that to him, and he was shaking, and we had to change the subject, buy him food. But what was beautiful about that was he spoke to his mother and said, I'm going to try and fix what's happened, because his father and other father figures, he had really bad relationships with them, and that created the trauma. So it had nothing to do with consciousness, bro. It had nothing to do with Allah's names and attributes. It was to do with the fact that he had a particular cracked lens that made him see reality in a skewed way. And that's what trauma does.
And would you regard that as a destructive doubt, or what you talk about when you talk about destructive
doubt? Yeah, so
shubuhat
is the plural for shubha, which is a destructive doubt. And a destructive doubt is not like a question, because generally speaking in Islam, you could ask any question, apart from questioning the essence of Allah and also thinking the unthinkable, because the Sunnah teaches us that you can't think the unthinkable. It's irrational to think the unthinkable, for example, yeah? But apart from some caveats, generally speaking, any question goes, as long it comes from a psychological and spiritual...
Rewind, what do you mean by unthinkable? For the views, in case of wonders.
Like, you can't reflect on the essence of Allah by virtue of who He is. The unthinkable is something that is beyond your cognitive apparatus and your cognitive ability, right? So, for example, can we think about the essence of Allah? By virtue, because of who Allah is. Because Allah is a transcendent being. He created the heavens and earth. Creation is distinct and disjoined from Allah. Anything you think about is going to be anthropomorphic. Yeah? Sure. So that's thinking the unthinkable.
And it will limit Allah's attributes.
Yes.
So
the questions, it's important to make this distinction. So questions are anything, as long as it comes from a spiritual and cognitive space, that you're not undermining the foundations of Islam, and you're not trying to distort the religion. If you don't have that intentional psychological space, anything goes. And we see this in the Sunnah. Yeah? That's a valid question. Then you have waswasa, shaitanic whisperings. These are not doubts. And we have to be able to make distinctions, because not making distinctions, you may think your waswasa is a doubt, and it may end up being a doubt because you focus too much on it. But to cut a long story short, if you look at the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba came to Prophet ﷺ and said, we have thoughts that we basically hate. Yeah, we don't like these thoughts. And the Prophet said, is this really the case? This is a sign of Iman. So having waswas is a sign of Iman if you react like the Sahaba, which is, I don't believe in these ideas, these whisperings. I have a psychological aversion to them. And the other hadith says that you basically don't talk about them and don't act upon them. So if that's the case, it's a sign of Iman. Okay? And that's not a destructive doubt, because you haven't adopted it. It's like clouds walking past the sky of your mind. Let them just move. If you adopt them, they're going to become darkened and it's going to rain doubts. Don't do that, because you hate them. If you were to write them down, you don't believe in it, right? And if you were to read them out, you hate them. That's a sign of Iman. They're not yours. It's from shaitan or lower self. Ignore it. And don't talk about it and don't act upon it. Shubuhat are something very dangerous. They're like parasites, yeah? Like the Arabs say, tushbihu. It resembles something that it's not. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing, yeah? It's fangs behind feathers, yeah? What shubuhat do is like they're parasites that want to drain your iman, suck it dry, sit on the heart. They go inside the heart and they want to drain your iman. And they don't have an intellectual foundation, but they have a tinge of truth sometimes, because they're wolves in sheep's clothing. But fundamentally, they're false. And what shubuhat do, or how to recognize them, is based on two things. Number one, they undermine the foundations of the deen. Number two, they try to distort the religion of Islam. It comes from that psychological space, spiritual space. Now that can be, bro, in a form of a question or a statement. So I can say, yeah, Sheikh, yeah, Ustad, I want you to teach me how to prove God's existence. That could be a doubt and a valid question at the same time, depending where it comes from. I could be asking it because I doubt. I don't believe in, I don't have conviction in Allah's existence, even from a fitrah perspective. I may be asking it just to create a distortion of the religion. That would be a shubha, yeah? But if I say, yeah, Ustad, yeah, Sheikh, please teach me how to prove God's existence, I may be doing it because I want to move away from ilm al-yaqeen to ayn al-yaqeen or haqq al-yaqeen, different levels of certainty in the Islamic tradition, yeah? But I already believe it doesn't come from a psychological, spiritual state where I am doubting the foundations or want to distort the religion. Do you see? So it's subtle. Or it could be a statement. So shubuhat are real, they exist. And Lighthouse Mentoring we have developed as part of Sapience Institute, because Lighthouse Mentoring is a project of Sapience Institute. We have a course that you could access online for free on learn.sapiencinstitute.org. It's basically called No Doubt, 10 effective strategies on how to deal with your doubts and the doubts of others. And those 10 effective strategies are just brilliant. And Sheikh Fahad Tassim has written a book that you could download for free on the Sapience Institute website. It's called No Doubt. Download it. It's fantastic. And this Dhul Hijjah, we've done a Yaqeen type series. It might not be as good as Yaqeen because, they've got a little bit more resources to do effective videography and stuff, but we've tried our best. They're great competitors in that regard, and we love them because my children watched the series, and I texted Imam Umar on Eid, I think, saying Eid Mubarak, Jazakallah khair, was an amazing series, and he messaged back even though he's very busy, may Allah bless him. Amen. So we've tried to do something very special for Dhul Hijjah. So we're going through all of the 10 effective strategies in a popular way, poetic way, but also with depth, but in a way that everyone can understand. And we're teaching everyone 10 effective strategies on how to deal with your doubts and the doubts of others. And
when's this coming out? Was it available?
Dhul Hijjah. Okay. And the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. And by the way,
filmed in Jordan, yeah?
It was filmed in Jordan, yeah. And by the way, with regards to the Lighthouse Mentoring, they could go to the Lighthouse Mentoring website if people want to discuss with a mentor. It's private, confidential. Just go to lighthousementoring.org and you just can have your 1 hour for free, and if you need repetition, it will be free again, and you have a trained mentor that goes through your shubuhat. Now we talked about trauma. Now, just to be very clear here, trauma is not the only reason why people have doubts. One of our strategies, though, one of the 10 strategies, is how to deal with trauma to deal with your doubts. But there's so many other effective strategies, which obviously we can't unpack now, but such as sort out your social circle, your friends, right? Look at your environment, gaining ilm, Islamic knowledge in a transformative way, because the haqq will blow the brains of the batil, of the falsehood, as Allah says in the Quran. And it's true. When some of these shubuhat, destructive doubts that come in the form of theological doubts, like, oh, how come women get half inheritance of men, for example? If you study fiqh, it just annihilates that doubt.
For sure.
Big time, because in around 16 cases, women get more than men, right? I think in around 4 cases they get around the same, or something like that. It's not because it's intrinsic that you're a woman, therefore you're going to get less. No, it's about 2 principles in fiqh. It's the closest to the deceased and your role and responsibility based on the Islamic hierarchy, which is important for the flourishing of humanity and of the Muslim community. Now, when you see that in place, you see it's a beautiful law, and it's there to emancipate women economically and to take care of them and to allow humanity and society to flourish.
Coming back to doubts.
Yes, sorry.
No, don't be. And staying on the topic of doubts, one of the regular and most consistently addressed doubts is the question of evil.
Yes.
Right? Pain and suffering. It's one that yourself and many other brothers have been addressing for years. Now, we've seen 19 months of a live stream genocide in 4K every day. It aches us. It makes us appreciate everything we have, from our health to our wealth to our children to our loved ones to security, all of that. And the people of Gaza have exemplified people who are experiencing trauma, but the way they've managed it and the way they have shown the Ummah and the rest of the world is that they still seem very much unquestionably full of Iman and fully accepted and embraced what's happened and have shown spiritual consolidation. What are your thoughts on the experiences of our brothers and sisters in places like Gaza, where there's drones and F-35s roaming on top of people's heads and hospitals and tents round the clock? Would you not think, some would say, that if anyone in the world should have doubts or question evil and pain, it would be those who experience things like this? Because the Jewish diaspora, a huge part of the atheism movement within the Jewish communities happened after the Holocaust. What happened in the Holocaust was something which was so traumatic, was so horrific, was so systematic and brutal, that it led to people questioning and ultimately leaving Judaism as a faith. So when you think of Gaza and what they've gone through, how do you link that to trauma, doubts, and people who exemplify the complete opposite?
So it's very interesting because Viktor Frankl, he was a Jewish Holocaust survivor. He wrote the book Man's Ultimate Search for Meaning. He's got quite an amazing quote. He basically said, if you give meaning to your trauma no longer becomes trauma, right? You can transcend your trauma in some way. And he kind of, I don't want to misquote him, kind of thanked the Nazis. Not because of what they did, but because...
He thanked the Nazis.
Well, not thanked them for what they did, but he was appreciative of the fact that I've got a particular trauma and it allowed me to have an experience where I can attach certain meaning to that trauma so I could transcend it, and it helped him develop and give him a meaning and an ultimate purpose in life. Yeah? I really suggest everyone reads that book. It's actually quite a powerful book, Man's Ultimate Search for Meaning. Now, in terms of what's happening in Gaza, Dr. Ismail Latif has written an essay on the Sapience Institute website. It's called Education After Gaza. Just read the first line. The first line is something like, Gaza is the school where we rediscover our humanity. And it's true. I gave a talk about this in Wise, the High Wycombe Masjid, and I said that, look what the people of Gaza have done. They have faced the most horrific modern day genocide, the most horrific oppression, apartheid, oppression, injustice, systematic obliteration of the people of Gaza and the wider Palestinians. And look how many of them responded, bro, with praising Allah, with thanking Allah.
Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel.
Yes, with relying on Allah, with having tawakkul on Allah, with understanding how to give the correct meaning. I saw one guy in the early days having a box of sweets, bro, with blue wrappers, giving it to the community because I think his whole family died. He was sad, he was grief-stricken, but he gave it the correct cognitive spiritual framing. He was joyous from what point of view? I'm going paradise, man. They're taking me to paradise because a martyr could take, family members with you. Alhamdulillah, be joyous. Yes, we're going to be patient. It's painful for sure, but in the grand cosmic scheme of things, in the helicopter approach, Alhamdulillah, and I'm going to thank Allah 1 billion times on the Day of Judgment this happened to me. Now, this doesn't mean we want death in that way, or we want chaos and calamity and pain. No.
Or he justifies that in action that they're going to be martyred. So
yeah, of course not. We have to do what we have to do. We do what is pleasing to Allah. And if we are faced with a trauma and calamity, we ask, what is the best way to react? And this brother and many of the brothers and sisters in Gaza, although there's a lot of pain and suffering, they're giving it the correct meaning. And that can only happen, bro, in my view, if you have Islam. Because Islam has the theological and spiritual tools that you use to give trauma the correct meaning, to transcend your trauma in some way. Gaza is one of the best kind of modern day examples of dawah. How many people became Muslim because they said, I want to be like them?
Loads,
I want to be like them. I'm an American, I'm a Brit, I'm a European, I'm sitting at home, I'm crying about certain issues that I have, and in contrast to the people of Gaza, it's nothing. I know life's gonna hit me in the face. Life's gonna kick you in the mouth, and your teeth are gonna be everywhere. You have to pick them up in the darkness. Life is painful. It could be painful, but it's never gonna be as painful as the people of Gaza, most likely. I want to be like them. But what do they have that I don't? That's the question that I'm asking. I want to be able to deal with my life like they have. Because life is going to hit you in the mouth, whether it's maybe you might lose a loved one, lose children, could be divorce, it could be disease, it could be whatever the case may be. It's not going to be, if you look at the probabilities, anything compared to genocide. But look how they reacted. And that's why the people of Gaza have proven their humanity, bro. We're yet to prove that we're human. Sorry to say. Yeah. And even on the issue of
and that's all of us.
Yeah, but even the Ummah, I think the Ummah have failed Gaza, frankly. Sorry to say. I know you may disagree with this. The people of Gaza have won.
Necessarily. I mean, it depends how you look at it.
Yeah.
For sure there's merit to it.
Yeah,
Depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, I think that definitely the Ummah has failed.
Those who definitely have means and abilities and capabilities have for sure failed Gaza.
But I also believe that there's capabilities that we think we didn't have that we do have as well, which is another discussion.
You just mention a couple of things.
Well, as a man, there's so many things that we could do that we don't do, bro. Like 1,000 of us could have walked and done something. Look what Palestine Action are doing. How many Muslims are there, bro?
Will you be joining them for their next move?
No. But I have my reasons for that. But do I retweet and support them? Yes, I do.
Yeah, same. We get them coverage and
of course. So everyone has their role, but what I'm just saying is, as a community, there are things that we can do that we think that.
But do you accept that those who have access and means should be held to more?
Yeah, but we all have access and means, whether it's physical or spiritual, bro.
It differs.
Of course it does, but yet take everyone's context into consideration. As a man with blood, and you're a male, there are things that we could do that we did not do. It's as simple as that. Let's just be honest, bro. Not only physically, but spiritually. Like spiritually, for
clarify
example.
the physical bit in case someone misinterprets it.
Oh, right, okay.
What do you mean by physical?
Well, hypothetically speaking, many Muslim men could have joined Palestine Action. Like Dr. Asim Qureshi made a beautiful point. He said, if you could take a bullet away from the genocidal regime and put it in your pocket, would you do it? Yeah.
Of course.
And though there's many bullets in this country that you could take away, but just by virtue of not harming human beings, but harming bricks and mortar, right? And in many cases, it's not necessarily illegal, right?
You're on that, yeah.
Sorry?
You're on that.
I would say that in answering your question, not to get you into trouble now, but to
not get you into trouble.
No, to answer your question, is that something that you can do? Now, whether that has legal ramifications of that or not is kind of irrelevant. Think about this, bro. We're living in the age of the genocide, and we're concerned with the legal ramifications about breaking down a door that's not going to harm a human being. Do you see my point?
For sure, but...
Yeah, but this is important because... And this is the biggest psyops. I'm going to be honest with you. It's one of the biggest psyops that has happened to the Muslim community. and now, you've triggered me slightly, but in a good way. And I don't.
You mentioned Pal Action.
No, but it's good. But let me just say something.
By the way, I just want to say something about Pal Action and Huda, by the way. Sister Huda Amori, one of the founders, we've hosted her and she's a top sister.
Yes.
And I've said it to her face. You do noble work. You show, and the organization shows more fortitude than anyone on the front lines of the Palestinian liberation cause. Far more than many Muslims.
Yeah, but I'm going to make a point.
But there is a fine line, though, that I also believe that the certain demographic who's involved with Pal Action can get away with certain things that others may not so easily.
Agreed.
In the eyes of a jury, in the eyes of a court, in the eyes of a judge. But never about take anything. I think they're frontliners.
Agreed. That was as an example. There's other things, but the thing that you need to consider is what I consider the biggest psyops that's happened in this genocide. And the biggest psyops is that we think we've done enough by just boycotting and just creating awareness, writing books and doing articles and putting posts. Yeah, but that's the kind of feeling. And when I see, and I think you invited certain brothers, and I love them to bits, I just feel that there's a massive we've infantilized our community. The middle-class Muslims have these dinners, talk about the Ummah's waking up, the Ummah's great, the Ummah's fine, Gaza was a victory. With all due respect, bro, if Gaza's a victory, then the Battle of Uhud was the conquest of Mecca. This is bizarre, insane, irrational. What spiritual, theological criteria do we have to say that Gaza is a victory? Have we seen what's happening? It's a victory for the people of Gaza because they reacted, they've passed the test, Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. But for the Ummah, to claim it's a victory is the greatest form of infantilization that I have seen on social media. To the point I get angry. I feel like getting a brother and saying, what's wrong with you? If I could slap him, I'll slap him. So what is wrong with you? You're sitting there saying to middle-class Muslims that have a nice 9-to-5 job, they got the BMWs, they got the cars, they got the Golfs, they got the house, they got their wives, children, all comfort, just to make them feel happy. Bro, wallahi.
It's best, but if
the Sahaba were alive,
the danger would be that they do nothing.
But that
also exists.
I agree, bro. But you think,
or to encourage them to do more.
Yeah, but that's not encouraging them to do more. That's why you have the likes of Dr. Asim Qureshi having to come out and gun our own ulama sometimes. You have fatwa, bro. It's fard to vote in this election is going to stop the genocide. With all due respect, any political, social, theological, philosophical, theophilosophical analysis would render your claims meaningless and void. Sorry to say. Where are the fatwa of things that we have to be doing? No. Bro, I'm just saying we have to slaughter the elephant in the room. But as a man, I've been relatively silent on social media. I just tweet now. I just retweet, repost because there is a.
So what do you want to see more?
There is a deep pain, bro.
So what do you want to see more of? Look, bro, the solution to Gaza and
those are two different questions.
But just
it doesn't matter what I want to see. What I'm saying is if you
think that's not what we should be doing,
we should be doing that as well, creating the awareness. But the biggest side is that's enough.
It's uplifting, is encouraging optimism.
But it's not.
How is genuinely...
I'd rather be a realist than be a deluded optimist.
Bro, can I ask you something? It's
delusional, bro. It's delusional.
Listen to me.
What does Allah say? Chapter 13, verse 11. Yeah, we had this discussion privately as well. Yeah. And I spoke to Shaykh Haytham about this and he kind of agreed with me. Allah says, Allah would go to the tafsir, bro, from 19th century backwards, yeah? 20th century backwards. Mm-hmm. There's almost a quasi-ijma' consensus on this issue. Allah will not change the situation of a people until they change what's within themselves. Anfusihim, yeah?
Yeah.
Which means what in general? It means Allah will not change your state of favor to disfavor unless something happened inside. Now, obviously, I don't want to be like the group of people that think blame the Ummah. I don't believe in that. There needs to be a balance. You know, a lot of brothers saying boycott Coca-Cola. We were talking about this yesterday when we went to the shop. Boycott your nafs. Boycott your sins. Because we know, because Allah says in the Quran, "O you who believe, turn back to Allah jami'an, collectively, in order for you to be successful." The big thing that hasn't been spoken about as well is our internal malaise that we need to fix as well. But we should do it in a way that doesn't create a kind of pessimism and create a kind of hopelessness, but in a way that motivates and inspires. But we fear that and we don't do it. We don't talk about it.
So those that...
How many of the scholars have you seen saying, we need to fix ourselves, let's wake up for tahajjud, let's do istighfar, let's do this?
There's loads of scholars saying that.
We're collective.
Well,
as part of the activists, no, I haven't seen it.
But there's loads of them saying
not on the same level.
Some would argue there's too much of that.
Where?
Some would say that's too much.
Name me 3 scholars.
That Gaza's issue.
Name me 3.
Bruv, I'm talking about
I'm putting you on the spot because I want to know where it is.
khatibs and imams up and down the country since the Gaza genocide started have been encouraging their congregations to pray more, to get out for tahajjud.
I think you're missing the point. Agreed, but I'm talking about the activist type because activism, because this is the problem of secularizing activism. I think many of our practicing brothers, they're secularists and they don't know it. They have secularized their strategies for activism. I'm being honest, bro.
This is a new position. This is an old position you've had for some time.
Yeah, I believe in this.
Yeah.
The reason you have secularized your activism is because you think there is an intrinsic power in just following this particular way of activism and is devoid of every other macro and specific principle you can find in the Quran and Sunnah that is necessary for change. Because it's internal. And then what do we hear from some silly people? Which you've told me as well. I'm not saying you're silly, but you've matured as well. So if I will mature on a journey. You said, yeah, bro, you can't quantify it. How is that an argument? You can't even quantify any of your deeds because your deeds have the right intention. Ikhlas is unquantifiable. And we're going to be successful for people of Ikhlas. So the whole quantifiable issue is irrelevant.
When you cite that verse of the Quran.
Yes.
When you cite that verse of the Quran.
Sorry for the passion, but...
No, it's good. No, it's good. We like passion because it was a podcast site.
By the way, just for the brothers to understand, this is about me as well. I spent the whole Ramadan not reading the Quran in Arabic.
You just saw it in English.
I decided to do it in English, to go through the whole of the Quran and to... It's in my bag. It's got tags everywhere. Just to really engage with the macro and specific meaning. And I learned a lot about myself as well. And it's encouraged this type of thinking. Because internally, myself, I have a lot of work to do. Because does every Muslim man want to be in the spiritual and cognitive space and level where they can, if it was required, within a particular context, to say, I can easily sacrifice everything for the sake of Allah. And that's where we need to be, bro.
Brothers and sisters and friends, I see that you're enjoying the content. How come you've not clicked subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel? And if you're watching via Rumble, how come you've not subscribed on our Rumble channel? If you like the content, you like the guests, you like what we're talking about, it's absolutely inexcusable and cheeky for you not to click subscribe. Thank you and Jazakallah khair. Bro, you know when you cited that verse...
Do you agree?
Just hear me out. I agree. Yes, mostly I agree. But on the point of, rectifying ourselves and Allah will not change the situation of the Ummah and that. The reason why the counter or quantification or quantify it is because there are those who have misused that verse.
Agreed.
They've created an entire movement around that verse.
Agreed.
Which has pacified the masses.
Agreed.
Which has made them detached to the Ummah's issues.
Agreed.
Right? So that's why we'll quantify it. It's because literally you'll find brothers from a particular leaning that will say literally because this act of zina happened or these brothers are smoking shisha in Cairo, this is why this happened in Gaza. You've heard these type of arguments.
Yeah, that's inaccurate because it's about turning back, which means it means there's something to turn back away from.
Why they would
Allah doesn't want us to be sinless, bro.
Because we don't want X sin equals...
Those are silly arguments. They're not mature. Agreed. But I'm not saying to adopt that approach.
X sin equals Y reality.
Habibi,
therefore,
agreed.
Z to blame.
I give an example. Part of our malaise, because everything is a state of heart. Everything. Because your action is a derivative of your state of heart. No one's going to deny that Islamically, yeah? So, if you don't command the ma'ruf, command the good and forbid the munkar, forbid the evil, then there's something wrong with you. And that's part of the problem. So that's the counter to them. And you don't have to be perfect to command the good, forbid the evil. You're sinful. Wallahi, paradise is going to be full of sinners.
For sure.
Wallahi, yeah? So no one's saying you're going to be sinless. So when you turn back, you're turning back away from something, from a state. And it's a continuous process. So I'm not saying adopt that attitude at all. All I'm saying is we can't infantilize the ummah, bro. That's the problem. And I see a lot of infantilizing. And it's like, a lot of people feel this. They're just afraid to say it because they think, seem too negative. No, I do not consider Gaza a victory in any shape or form. The whole place, our brothers and sisters have been massacred. We have been humiliated. There was not one man of this ummah during the last 2 weeks of Ramadan that could give water to a thirsty, dying baby in Gaza. There was a period of time. There was not one man in this ummah, bro. And you're saying to me that it's a victory? You're saying to me it's a victory? We're having, we have so many Muslim men around the world. We have access to power. We have ability to do something. And
well, this is Wahan now, isn't it?
Exactly, bro.
So now we're talking about Wahan.
But Wahan it's connected to this verse as well, bro, about internal state.
Yeah,
because what is Wahan?
Love for this life and hate for death.
Love for the dunya, hubb ad-dunya, love for the dunya and hatred for death. wahan. And because remember, the hadith says, aren't you going to be many in number? No, you're going to be like the foam, the scum, the froth of the sea. Yeah. So it's about quality, not just quantity. Now, obviously, I could be misinterpreted and misunderstood now. The point I'm trying to say
you
is...
will be by some quarters.
Yeah, I don't mind. And I have an argument in place based on reflection. But I think there is something serious. This Gaza is a big wake-up call for the rest of the Ummah to reflect about our internal state and what we do externally, how we act as well, because they both come together. And there needs to be some serious conversations now. I do not like the infantilizing stuff, honestly, because it has to match reality, bro. The lens of Islam, because Islam, its ontology, its understanding of the source and nature of reality, its epistemology, how it understands truth and the sources of knowledge, its anthropology, how it understands the human being. It's a worldview, it's not a religion, it's a deen. That lens of Islam is the only lens to understand reality accurately. Any other worldview skews it. But what we're doing, we're not adopting the right lens, especially when we come with infantilizing nonsense, in my view.
Would you encourage a Muslim brother or sister who doesn't pray their salah to attend a pro-Palestine demo? Or a brother who's a drug dealer to organize an event in his local Islamic center?
These are specific contexts. I don't know. If he had the right intention, yes, because you should always keep a door...
on what people
you should always keep a door open to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It could be the case, bro, that, someone's sadaqah, like the most rebellious woman of Bani Israel, which some people say she was a prostitute. She gave water to a thirsty dog. And the narration... The lessons that we get from the ulama is that Allah engulfed it in His mercy, because Allah is saying, she's so merciful to the dog, but I am the merciful of the merciful, right? Allah's rahmah, He's ar-Rahman, the intensely merciful. So He forgave her. He enveloped her in His mercy. So keep a door open to Allah. But that person's individual context, does that guy, sister, whoever they are, do they need to pray? Of course. Do they need to believe in Allah? Of course. Do they need to do all the other necessary obligations? Of course. Now, I'm not going to say, if you, through your iman and through, you wanting to command good,
the ummah,
and all these praiseworthy things,
you're going to get this sadaqah, you're going to boycott this brand.
Whoever says no is stupid.
Bro, I'm doing this for clarification because it can be conflated.
No, that's insane.
No, because someone could be thinking, well, Hamza's belittling boycotting. Hamza's belittling...
No, of course I'm not.
Literally putting an X on a banner.
I was saying I'm belittling the psyops. I do believe it's the psyops, because they plan this very well, because they know the nature of social media. They say, we're going to keep them within this paradigm, the paradigm of protesting, the paradigm of boycotting, which doesn't really affect them in a grand cosmic scheme of things. It may affect people here and there, but not massively. Yeah,
the BDS campaigns have led to some good results.
But not enough to even consider it harming a genocide in any shape or form. Yeah.
But how is that any different to what Asim said, or what you said earlier about a single bullet that's not going to go?
No, it all accumulates. You're missing the point. I said just focusing on this. The psyops is, and just to be very clear for the audience, the psyops is...
To be clear about the audience, the solution to Gaza is jihad fi sabilillah.
Yes, of course.
So and there are those who is obligated...
So the greatest psyops is that we just focus on posts, tweets...
Hamza, that doesn't fall within our remit as Muslims in the West, bro. It's on those who are within the proximity, in the geographic proximity, those who have means and mal and wealth and ability and weapons and armies. And the solution is that the reason why a single man of this ummah couldn't take a bottle of water to Gaza is because there's a whole entire political and historical context as to why that logistically and politically can't not
get
happen.
That. Yeah. So why are not many people talking about them, bro? Why is it the case that
because you'll get your door booted down by SO15 and you get lifted and arrested?
No, not necessarily.
Bro, I had CIDs knock on my door over a tweet. What do you think is going to happen if we start normalizing conversation? Unnuanced conversation.
Agreed, right? but wouldn't people therefore say that reaction is therefore part of our problem?
Possibly, for sure.
Because that's isn't that part of the wahan then?
I agree, but what I'm trying to say is that there are those who have more responsibility on the next than others.
Yeah, but you have proven my point. But the point is therefore, why, and this is my perception, have we kind of felt that it's okay to infantilize the ummah, thinking that there is a great success going on and a great victory. That obviously you could spin it as a victory in a metaphysical, spiritual sense for sure. But let's be honest.
Other ways. The way Zionism has been exposed, the way Israel can never, they can never really rebuild what people have seen in the last 18, 19 months. Personally, by
Agree,
the way,
yeah.
I
Those
don't
are
thi-
smaller victories.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't think they're whole ummatic huge victories, but for sure, in terms of public relations, in terms of raising awareness, in terms of educating people, in terms of exposing Zionism and Israel and its genocidal, ethnic cleansing ways and roots, I think there's been victories now. We've had
Agreed, yeah.
so many shahadas and people come to Islam. as a result of this.
Agreed. But though that's that you wouldn't call it saying Gaza was a victory. That's a big statement. Yeah. Those are the positives that we can frame as a result of what's happened. But I wouldn't call it a victory
No, we agree
for the
with that.
Ummah.
No,
I would say the Ummah has failed Gaza.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, failed. But the only nuance I'd add to that is that some bear more responsibility.
100%.
than others.
100%. But this is my point. So therefore,
No one is free of it. No
by
one's free of
virtue of what you've just said, this is a clear indication that, generally speaking, the online activism sphere, that it's almost been a psyops or kind of psychological operation that we're not even aware of, just to keep us within a particular narrative. And that's the problem.
bringing this conversation to a.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. I get what you're saying. I just want the viewers and listeners to not conflate that with, or misinterpret what you're saying, and that is discouraging or belittling or dismissing some acts that literally could be done for the sake of Allah.
No, of course, bro. No one is saying that. No one is saying that. No one is saying that.
I'm trying to avoid that type of misinterpretation.
Yeah.
Doing it
No,
for you.
And that's why I even made it very clear that we don't want to go down that narrative because it's basically disempowering.
That is disempowering. Spot on.
Of course, agreed. No, we have to do it in a way though that is in line with our tradition, but that it empowers. Because every psychological state that Allah wants you to be in, whether it's khawf, fear, whether it's khashya, whether it's awe, whether it's taqwa, whether it's muhabba, love, all these different emotions, Allah never wants you to be in these states to make you move away from the truth and away from Him. When Allah mentions that He wants you to be in these states, it's for you to turn back to Him and to align yourself with the truth. And that's a very important principle in the Quran and the Sunnah. So even when we talk about these things, we shouldn't give people a state of hopelessness or a state of, but at the same time, being too hopeful is a disease of the heart, or being delusional is a disease of the heart. It's a victory. The Ummah's waking up. There may be some element of truth in it, but it's not a representation of the actual state of affairs. There's a lot of work we need to do, and we need to be realistic in that, right? And there's things that we should have done that we haven't done in every level of society, political and individual. And those things need to be spoken about, because if we don't learn those lessons, bro, it's just these issues are going to recycle. And that's the problem.
How would you respond to those who may counter to that by saying, well, you've described one type of secularization of dawah and activism with regards to Palestine. We may feel that you're kind of leaning towards that as well, but in a very different way. You've made this, again, rooted around spirituality, whereas these acts could be spiritual acts.
I didn't, because I focused on Palestine action in the beginning. I didn't say that at all. It has to be both. The secularization is when there's a deprioritization of one over the other. Either one, yeah, that's the secularization. And the secularization is that we don't ask the question, what does Allah want from us in this context? Yeah, this is my point. You know, no one deserves a tap on the back, bro, for being on Twitter or making videos. Sorry to say, I wrote a book on this issue. First book. It was the first book on this issue within 6 weeks of the genocide. Yeah, I'm not saying it to praise myself, but that's what we did. It was part of Sapience. It's there, right? But I don't deserve a tap on the back on that in any shape or form. You know, it's an easy thing to do. Bro, hard work is easy. One thing I learned about going through the whole of the Quran is hard work is easy. Anyone could work hard.
Because you could do hard work without making losses.
Yeah. What's difficult, bro,
is sacrifice.
Sacrifice is the willingness to lose yourself, lose your life, lose your wealth for the sake of Allah. That, my friend, is something else. And that connects to the issue of wahan. And that connects to the issue of,
for sure,
Allah will not change the situation of favor to disfavor unless we messed up. Something happened within. And that requires a massive tarbiyah, a massive engagement with the Islamic tradition and elevating each other. And by the way, I include myself in this. Yeah, one of the greatest lessons I learned from going through the whole of the Quran in the month of Ramadan was seeing my own shortcomings, bro. When you see like the repeated formulaic statements in different ways about the munafiqeen, about those, are they really willing to be on the intellectual and physical front line for the truth, for the sake of Allah? Are they willing to do that?
Very explicit.
Because Allah, you don't read the Quran reads you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when you see those things repetitively, things to do with sacrifice, things to do with, are you one of the munafiqeen, one of the hypocrites? Yeah. If you were in that context, would you do what you should do? Or would you be someone, what's your intuitive internal feeling? Are you hesitant?
Well, there were very explicit addresses towards the munafiqeen who did not want to fight, who did want to run away from battle and had different intentions. Yeah. In fact, not that...
It's not just about...
Even the Sahaba were addressed.
Of course.
In terms of those who would have preferred to have raided the caravans instead of fighting and meeting the enemy. But Allah decreed for you to meet, even though there was many within the ranks from the believers who did not want to fight.
Yeah, so that internal struggle is a very important one. So, and I came to the conclusion that if someone sincerely reads the whole Quran, like with tadabbur, with pondering, I kind of find it impossible that they'll turn out arrogant. It's like, how? Like this book, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is designed to humble you. Not in a way to destroy you, but to humble you to the degree so you're ready for spiritual elevation. I just find it impossible that someone is arrogant continuously if they're a person of the Quran. This is a very dark state to be in. Because, bro, if you really go through the whole of the Quran that talks about Allah, His greatness, His mercy, His love, His power, His ability, talks about, the pending punishment collectively if people don't fix up, talks about, the people of shirk and so on and so forth, talks about the munafiqeen, talks about internal states, talks about the different levels of nafs, talks about, reactions to certain events that expose who you are, that reveal you, because fitna comes from the root word, that boils, cleanse metals. It brings out the scum in you, which could either purify you, expose who you are. That's what fitna does.
Yeah.
Fitna actually purifies you, exposes you. It depends how you react to events.
Cleanses, purifies.
And you see that narrative throughout the Quran, thinking, subhanAllah, who am I in this? Yeah. Where is my allegiance? Am I really someone who believes in the Lord of the heavens and the earth, and I am His servant? I am someone who's humbly adoring Allah. Because humbly adoration is just a feeling, it has to manifest in action in some way. Submission, acts of love, acts of obedience, acts of sacrifice. So I think, one of our major issues, especially me individually, is maybe I've conflated hard work with sacrifice. And it's been a massive exposure of maybe who I am as a human being. So we have to do that collectively, be men of sacrifice, not just men of hard work. And that, my dear friend, is a very hard place to be. It requires a lot of connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It requires, we need to elevate our game, bro. Night prayers, tahajjud, du'as, Quran, dhikr, sadaqah, humbling ourselves, tazkiyatun nafs. We have to be those people. Otherwise, we're just going to have this recycled mess all the time.
Well, my dear brother, the final question I'll posit to you is, we've spoken a lot about trauma, destructive doubts, how our brothers and sisters in Gaza have exemplified the complete opposite of that, being a people of firm conviction and belief and sacrifice. We've spoken about how potentially certain acts in solidarity with Palestine could be a very secularized type, detached of what Allah wants from us. We've discussed all of these things. So I'll conclude with the final question to you and take some time in responding to it, because it covers a wide span of time period. Hittin Institute, the Krauss debates, the Speaker's Corner appearances, the fiery debates, IERA, CEO of IERA, Sapience, managing the likes of Muhammad Hijab and others, and just the vast kind of experience that you've had, that Allah's blessed you with in your travels, the different people that you've met in the different fronts, East and West. How much of what we've discussed have you seen pan out within the dawah field? The traumas, the doubts, the conflation between hard work and sacrifice. How much of it have you seen? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Is it going to be constantly there? Do du'at suffer from these same things? Do they suffer from it more? Should they exemplify a better way of handling it, at least in public? I know it's a huge thing I've just asked, but just think about it. How much of what we've discussed applies and exists within the sphere and the circuits of dawah.
Yeah, it does exist, and it may always exist, bro. That's the human condition. Like, we always say to brothers and sisters that Allah has the picture, we just have the pixel. Allah is Al-Hakim, Al-Alim. He's the wise, the knowing. As Ibn Kathir says, the classical exegete, Allah has the totality of knowledge and wisdom. We just have its particulars. So what I'm going to say is based on my particular experiences, which are not great, they're better than others, I guess, but I also have my own traumas that I may filter those experiences, or I may have my own traumatic lens whereby I see those experiences in a way that may not be accurate. So I'm not saying that this is an accurate portrayal of what's happening. But yeah, we do have our issues. And I think one of the greatest problems that we do face at the moment is the famous hadith, which is a Sahih hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he talks about fame and wealth, that man's excessiveness for fame and wealth, his greed for fame and wealth, is far more damaging to one's religion.
Other narrations also include women.
But listen to this one though, yeah? They're far more damaging to one's religion than two hungry, free roaming wolves amongst sheep. The imagery of that is so powerful. Like, it's an authentic hadith. And you have two hungry wolves amongst sheep, it's going to be a massacre. So the Prophet is saying that your excessiveness for fame and wealth, and with that comes women, of course, yeah?
No, but there are other narrations actually mentioned.
For sure. But I think from a dawah perspective, let's focus on this, especially when it comes to online dawah and what's happening with, dawah has become very popular now. It's mirrored a lot.
Dawahtainment.
Yeah.
In some aspects.
Yeah, it lacks some of its transformative nature, yeah? Because it's important to have that as a layer of the dawah, but we've overemphasized so much, we've dismissed other important layers, which Lighthouse picks up the pieces for that, yeah? We have all the answers to many of the shubahat, but we still get hundreds of people with the same question because they need that human interaction, bro. Because if it was just about the message or something online, the Quran would have been enough. But we have the Quran and the Sunnah. The Quran says what to do, generally speaking. The Sunnah is how to do it. You need that human experience, relationship, manifestation, expression, connection. And sometimes we lack that a lot in the dawah, yeah? And that's why Lighthouse Mentoring, the brothers are working so hard. It's not inverted commas, sorry to say, sexy dawah that, oh, look at this, they're doing great work. It's behind the scenes, it's private, it's dealing with human problems, dealing with sometimes the mess of the online world as well. Someone said this, I don't really understand it. Someone wrote this, I don't understand it. This person I'm not connecting with, or he said something and they totally misunderstood it. They need now an hour to go through it.
I've asked you this before. I know we've spoken about it. It's absolutely related to,
yes, of course,
this final question. Is have you ever felt responsible for over, or perhaps influencing directly, indirectly, unknowingly, innocently, the overplaying of certain layers of the dawah, which might make you cringe now, or like you were? Yeah, look, you were one of the early maestros, bro. So
of course,
whether you intended or not, maybe those overplaying of certain layers could be a certain flex or a vibe that you...
Yeah, but I think I kind of balanced it at the right time.
Do you still feel remotely responsible?
I always feel responsible.
Alhamdulillah.
Because by virtue... That's why I don't get why people love to be leaders, yeah? I think they're insane. Leadership is full of pain, bro. There's a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, it's an authentic hadith, and it's about people of authority and leadership, and if they don't fulfill people's duties or enact the leadership in the right way, they won't smell the fragrance of paradise. And we've got some young 20-year-olds now, they want to not only be dua, they want to lead, right? So you have no idea what leadership is about, yeah? But anyway, putting that to the side for one moment, a Muslim should always feel responsible because there's always something better that they could have done. We should go to sleep at night thinking, did I do today what Allah wants me to do in my particular context? In actual fact, before we do an action, we should ask, what does Allah want from me in this particular context? Which means you have to know what the context is. You have to know what's pleasing to Allah. You have to know to apply Islamic ilm in that particular context to achieve that goal. There's a lot that needs to go on if you're doing this. This is not a joke. It's not a hobby, yeah? That's why this whole idea, I saw some brother, I really respect him, but he's got this massive campaign now of making more YouTubers or more influencers or more this and the other. And I wanted to message him saying, but what the hell are you doing? You're destroying these people. If the Salaf were alive, the pious predecessors, right? If our classical scholars were alive and they saw such a campaign, they'll probably whip the guy. Or they'll probably say, what's wrong with you? there's a lot of criteria that you have to have in place before you just throw yourself out there. Now I'm going to become an influencer. This is a part of the secularization process of the dawah, bro. But look, the problems that you've mentioned.
So there is a secularization aspect to that type of dawah.
Yeah, 100%. If someone said to me, I want to be a YouTuber, I'll say, don't. Why do you want to be a YouTuber? I'll say, why? It doesn't mean don't do it. But there needs to be some things like, do you have an Allah-centric goal? Mm-hmm. Is it akhirah-centric?
They would say yes and yes.
Okay, then you develop them. You're not there to destroy them, bro. You're there to get the best out of them. That's what a Muslim does.
Why can't you assume the best of them? That is what they're intending to do.
No, there is no assumption of the best in that case. In this case, it's of course not. In any shape or form, bro.
You wrote that off quick.
Yeah, of course, bro. Because
why can't someone become an influencer for the sake of Allah?
Of course they can. Yeah, well, do the hard work then. Let's do the hard work, the internal work. Because what you say,
they could be doing that as
what you say is going to be heavy. How you act is going to be heavy.
For sure.
Yeah. How many times have I online wanted to get someone and get his head and smash it into a computer screen? Yeah. So many times. We're human, right? Mm-hmm. Or I wanted to say to them, shut up. What are you talking about? Or I wanted to be in a particular way. Like maybe I am in the private setting. You can't. You have to hold it down for the sake of Allah. You have to try and adopt the sunnah. You have to try and adopt the principles Allah has given you because you're an ambassador. This is not about you. That's the point. This kind of egocentric approach to, conveying Islam is the most horrific strategy we've adopted. Not only is it secular, it's actually liberal. And we cuss liberalism. It's one of the most atomistic, individualistic forms of expression.
Do you convey this to those who
all the time
in that bracket?
All the time.
Do you think they take heed?
Yeah. Do I take heed, bro? That's the biggest question.
Okay, maybe that's.
But it's true. But let's be honest. I need to be that which I convey and I believe in and the principles I believe in. Yes, I try to be like that, but I'm not going to now say just because someone's not the
you just want to smash someone through the screen because you see some of the content and stuff. You just said that.
I didn't say that. I said when I'm engaging with people as well.
You want to?
Yeah, of course. I'm like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Especially if they're like, someone who hates Islam, whatever the case may be. You get angry or you get frustrated, but you have to hold your nafs for the sake of Allah. That's a sacrifice as well, right? The point is, this is not about pointing a finger and saying this brother's not great, this brother's got certain issues. We're all going to have issues, bro. If you look at the Sahaba had different personalities. And one of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ, that his leadership was so amazing that he was able to make these Sahaba into optimized human beings. That itself is a miracle. I'm telling you, if you study the life of the Sahaba and who they were and what they became, this is one of the greatest sociological miracles ever to have ever existed. Yeah, it's just phenomenal. Shows a lot about the Prophet ﷺ because his leadership was love service leadership. Like most of his enemies fell in love with him. I mean, think about that, bro. Yeah. But anyway, the point is, we're not here to gun anyone down. We're just here to say we need to give each other advice. We need to fix our way of being for sure. Become less individualistic, less atomistic. Like, look, Lighthouse Mentoring, right? One of the greatest projects in this Ummah. Sorry to say. I'm going to say it because I'm the founder and director.
No bias there?
No, there's no bias. I'll tell you why. Because what other entity is actually providing free 1 hour repetitive service with trained mentors to take people who have shubuhat and destructive doubts and take them on a journey to bring the iman, to elevate the iman, to get ex-Muslims back into the deen, help new Muslims, and also develop imams, teachers, du'at to optimize the dawah.
When you say free, as in like they are not being charged?
They're not being charged, yeah. And we basically develop these categories of people, and we try and do that. We wanted this 10 years ago. We were crying out 10 years ago. Parents were crying, my son has become ex-Muslim, or my daughter has left Islam, or she's removed the hijab, or my son now has, a Hindu girlfriend. What do we do? He wants to get married, but it's not allowed. All of that stuff. They wanted an organization like this, and it came. And we've got it now. We've done the hard work and we're continuing to do the hard work. We've got a brand new website. We've got a CRM system in place. We've got great things happening.
How many people have you dealt with?
Thousands, yeah. And thousands. Yeah, 1,000 people, yeah.
Since
2001, I believe, yeah. But this is the point. The point is we wanted the Ummah to support this because it requires money. Lighthouse doesn't need much. It needs about 50k a year, if that, yeah.
50k.
Yeah, hardly any responses, bro. Hardly any positive response. Now,
why doesn't that make?
And by the way, people who benefit from this, and let me just say about
why does that make you question Lighthouse then, as opposed to the Ummah's kind of lack of help or
because it's a solution that is needed and it's Allah-centric. So you can't question saying that's Allah-centric.
So you've never introspectively looked at Lighthouse and think you wondered why the Ummah hasn't given in a big way?
No. I wasn't even talking about the Ummah particularly. I was going to finish my point, which was about the individualism of the dawah. We have people who have benefited from our work, whether it's Lighthouse or Sapience, famous people, but they're not able to go out there and say support these people because they have contracts. They're not able to say, yeah, you know what?
Blast them.
No, because their contract's a contract. They can't say this is great work because their hands are tied elsewhere for something. And I'm telling you this, I believe this, wallahi, that they wouldn't even do it if they weren't getting paid.
Oof.
Wallahi, I believe that. If they did it,
that's quite damning.
How's it damning? Because I know people, there are two great options that are really rewardable. You have chosen only this option because you're getting filus, you're getting money. Which I'm not saying it's haram.
Where's the Hamza of Husna Dhan, bro? Like you,
bro, the Husna Dhan is I haven't mentioned names, bro. The Husna Dhan.
The Husna Dhan could be the fact that there's an actual material, worldly related to family reason why they can't.
Agreed.
Like falus.
Agreed. But I haven't said it's wrong.
But it seems like if he doesn't know you're entirely happy about it.
I'm saying this echoes again our notion of sacrifice, a notion of being real men.
Okay.
Yeah? And I know it's come from their mouths. I'm only doing a good deal.
If I can't pick up Sapience because I've signed a contract with a Muslim organization that I'm working with, and there's a contractual condition that says...
We will never have that condition.
But I'm not saying...
We will never have that condition.
But by we mean Sapience.
So Sapience will never give you that condition.
Okay, but I'm talking about others...
I don't care what other people do. I'm not in control of them.
But I'm asking that why would it be...
That's not a praiseworthy condition, bro. How is that a praiseworthy condition? Remember, let's move away from halal and haram. I'm talking about what is more in line with the deen.
I wouldn't say that is.
Exactly. That's my point. And now you're complaining about our state of affairs.
I'm merely trying to defend them.
I'm not saying you. No,
but I'm saying that...
Wallahi, I'm not saying what they're doing is haram. Be very careful here.
Yeah.
Just because my passion's coming across like it's haram, it doesn't mean it's haram, yeah? And by the way, just because something is legal, it doesn't actually mean that you're free of sin.
For
yeah,
sure.
just remember that, yeah? Because people use the fiqh in a way that goes against established maqasid of Islam. If you're misusing fiqh to go against an established Quran and Sunnah maqsad deliberately, it may be legal, but you may go to hell. You may be sinful. That's my position. It's the position of Shaykh Haytham. It's the position of ulama. People have taken fiqh in abstracto and they apply it and they think, oh, but I'm allowed. You're allowed, bro, but see you in hell. Sorry to say, you think this deen is devoid of ethics? This deen is devoid of any kind of, what does Allah intend behind this thing?
It's a contractual condition, Habibi.
No, you're missing the point. I'm not talking about that particular contract. I'm talking about the way we understand fiqh.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're going to go down that route...
That it would be better for the maqsad to actually not have conditions like that and actually praise the groups that are doing great work and encourage support for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I try and lead with that example. I try and do that because I really believe... bro, it's an aqeedah issue.
No, you do. You do it with Cage, you do it with Five.
Habibi, listen to me. It's an aqeedah issue.
You do it.
I believe it's an aqeedah issue.
That's pretty...
You haven't. Let me explain, bro.
Go on.
Bro, this is going to be a crazy podcast.
That's pretty hard.
Listen to this.
Go on.
It's an aqeedah issue. Sheikh Fadl Sulaiman told me this and he broke down crying. It was such a powerful... He came to the IR office when I was CEO and he said...
It doesn't take much to get you break down crying.
It does now, yeah.
Does it now?
Yeah, I haven't cried yet. But listen, what he said was this.
Okay.
Allah is Ar-Razzaq. He is the provider. Mm-hmm. Is Allah's bounty and provision limited?
Of course not.
Is it infinite? Is it boundless? Yes.
Sure.
Why do we act in the charity sector, in the political sector, in the organizational sector as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hands are tied? Why do we do that? Bro, when he told me this, I was in shock. I made a decision that my fundraising manager would help other organizations. Because even when I rationally didn't believe it, bro. I rationally did not believe it. I was like, no, because if we help them as well, give them all the algorithm stuff.
We lose out.
But I made a decision. Wallah, Allah gave us barakah.
It's a saturated market.
He increased our funds by 500%.
Allah.
By 500%, yeah? And what we do, we adopt the manhaj of Elon Musk, the manhaj of the capitalist, the manhaj of Adam Smith, the manhaj of all of these, people, these pagans, sorry to say, and we're forgetting about the manhaj of the Prophet ﷺ, which is more Allah-centric. Don't get me wrong. Allah, it's a practical religion as well. Allah says, don't give too much sadaqah to the point where you're going to be poor. Of course, have the balanced way. I agree. I get all those caveats. But come on, how we want the ummah to proceed. And these organizations are fulfilling a massive gap in the dawah. And then people who have benefited from it indirectly or directly, I'm not even willing to say, okay, here's a tweet, or I'll do a video for you, because everyone's hands are tied. To what? If it was to things that they believe to be much more important, may Allah bless you, bro. But I know from their own mouths, I'm doing this as well because what's tilt the balance is money. Okay, fine. Fine. But don't say to me, you're a personal sacrifice. Don't play that game. Don't want to come into my inner circle. Don't think that you're going to be a 3 and 8 a.m. guy when the poo hits the fan, that I'm going to be calling you. Because you're not that person. You are not that person. Sorry to say. It's not as if you're starving. And they're not, yeah? And this is a very important point. And yeah, people hate me when I talk about this. Good. I want them to burn. Because I burn. Because I want them to improve. I'm not doing it because I want to people... Because if I wanted to gun them down, I would have done a video, mention names, mention this, mention that. I would have produced contracts. Hey, look at this. Look at this, guys. Look at this. Look at this weasel. Look at this, demasculated guy. Look at this guy. Look at this greedy guy. Oh, I could do that left, right, and center, bro. I've managed IERA. I've managed Sapience. I've director of Lighthouse, this, that, and the other. I'm one of the most... people should kill me if they want things to be revealed one day. Yeah, kill me. No problem. The point is, do we want to be these type of people? Yes. There's nothing wrong with having a contract and benefiting. I'm not saying that. But you should think, what does Allah want from me? Bro, I'm even helping another organization, Islam 21C as well, may Allah bless them, yeah? Campaign driven, the Guardians, focusing campaigns.
Palestine Truth, LGBT, motherhood, that
yes,
campaign.
Yeah, really good campaigns, and hopefully it's going to be successful. Every organization has issues. Big people, their hands are tied. Some person can't mention a country, another person can't mention this, another person can't mention... SubhanAllah, what's going on? Because of what? What is the goal? Likes and shares? But likes and shares were a vehicle to something. They're not the end goal. The end goal is something else. It's Allah's pleasure. We have totally been consumed by the trap of the algorithm. We've become slaves to the algorithm, slaves to the world, bro. It's one.
But is it not?
Sorry to say.
And we do need to wrap up because you got some film and I've got some film. But is it not a metric to measure success? Engagement.
Well, it depends how you define success. Like me and Mohammed Hijab.
Worldly success.
Me and Mohammed Hijab, we were in South Africa, and mashallah, he was extremely hardworking in that trip, yeah. Actually, I learned a lot about him in that trip. It was a beautiful trip. We shaked about 16,000 hands. And we made a conclusion together. We said, shaking 16,000 hands was better than 16,000 likes. And that's the easiest answer. Why? Because you interacted with a human being. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at the algorithm, if you got a video that's 10 minutes, maybe 5% are only watching the whole thing. The rest are watching the first few seconds, just by virtue of the reels and the shorts and the TikTok generation that we live in. So the whole understanding of impact needs to be reassessed. Impact is not just by virtue of likes and shares. That's not impact. Impact is what happened as a result of the likes and shares to the person. And that is very hard to unpack and understand. Not just that, who was it? And what did they do with it? Because you could basically have 10,000 people following you, and those 10,000 people are really refined, and they actually do things with what you convey. You may have 2 million people that are there just for entertainment.
For sure.
That's not impact. Mm-hmm. Sorry to say, yeah. The 10,000 is rather than the 2 million. So I'm actually going to try and write about this because we have misunderstood what impact actually means, yeah. And impact is not only about how much money you raised either, yeah. This is very significant. Impact is something totally different, depending what your goal is. And that's where people get misaligned a bit, because if your goal is just to make money or have likes and shares, then you're successful. But what is success from a dini, Allah-centric perspective? That's a different kettle of fish. Once we establish that, then yes, the metrics will be an indicator. Yes, the retention will be an indicator. Yes, money may be an indicator. But greater indicators... Alhamdulillah. Greater indicators will be something else. Greater indicators will be who's transformed. What did they do with it? What other things did they create from that? Did you create a leader that had more impact, that accessed thousands of people, right? So I'd rather work on 5 leaders than 500 people that won't be leaders, because those 5 leaders may access 5 million people. Do you see? So this understanding is a very multi-layered understanding of impact. Yeah, like I would even say that based on what I've just said, someone like Dr. Uthman Latif, who's not that well known online, has probably more real-time impact from a dawah perspective than some popular YouTubers.
For sure, from a meaningful point of view.
Because the books that he's written, I know how many
And longevity.
Tens of thousands of people have read his book, the downloads that we, and the
longevity,
longevity and the narratives and how he influences people of influence that influence millions.
Yes.
Like one imam, right? We went to South Africa, we trained 500 ulama.
MashaAllah.
How many people do they access, bro? Say each of them access 100,000 each.
Entire congregation.
So you have maybe more than 2 million people or something, whatever, having direct influence. You're influencing them directly because you've taught someone about LGBTQ+, you taught someone about how to deal with it from an Islamic perspective, you taught them about how to deal with shubahat. This, Yusuf Ponders, the Chief Operating Officer for Lighthouse Mentoring, has more of a dawah impact, in my view, than many du'at. Why? Because he trains imams. He teaches them how to deal with shubahat. We're going to South Africa in June to teach a whole bunch of ulama and other people on how to deal with destructive doubts. And so on and so forth. We did try and develop leaders. Sheikh Haytham, not very, may Allah preserve him, not very well known online. He's known, but not that known like other, he's not a celebrity per se, yeah? I would choose him over any day. Sorry to say, not because I have a nice relationship with him and I really respect him and, you know, I've traveled with him, but because I know what he does, the visionaries. He could bring 100, 200 leaders together from politics, from business, from dawah, at different ages and levels of experience and levels of society, in a room, Turkey, South Africa, Pakistan,
Malaysia,
and change their lives to the point where it opens massive doors of opportunity for the dawah. Yeah, that is impact, bro. So obviously we haven't solved that question, the answer, but it's more than what people think. Yeah,
I think that's a very good note to end on. So much more can be discussed, and let's hope that your next visitation on the show isn't too long, inshallah.
Well, let's hope it's not behind bars now.
Definitely.
Well, God bless you, bro.
I thoroughly enjoyed that, bro.
No, exactly, bro. God bless you. Always good to see you.
Likewise, bro. Brothers, sisters and friends, I hope you all thoroughly enjoyed today's discussion as much as I did. Do remember that you can find this episode on all 4 seasons on all the major audio platforms. And of course, if you're tuning in via YouTube, don't be cheeky. Do remember to click subscribe to the 5 Pillars YouTube channel. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.